Video 6, problems with fonts. So this is more of a rant video more than anything, but it's also just kind of some real world, well, this is what you got to do to live with Adobe InDesign day to day. So fonts, when you're defining your paragraph styles, you use the fonts that are installed on your system, and you will very naturally, when you're defining your styles or setting your fonts or whatever, let's just say I've got my heading style here. I've called that title. Let's open up that style. You know, I'm using basic character fonts, open sans, extra bold. So in this menu, it doesn't give you any information about what type of font it is. Okay, but in this menu, it does. It gives you more information, and this is really important information. This little icon on the right hand side, this little O that stands for open type, this little T that stands for true type. Okay, and you can add it to your favorite fonts if you want to. But what we're really concerned about is these fonts here, like this little cloud with a check mark. That means it's an Adobe Cloud or Adobe Creative Cloud activated font, and that's fine. Except here's what happens a lot of the time, and I don't know why. It just doesn't work all the time. So, you know, InDesign has been queued up spinning a background task for an hour and a half now. And this is super, super common. In fact, 9 times out of 10, when I download somebody's InDesign file that uses embedded Adobe Creative Cloud fonts, it doesn't work. So it breaks. You can't use it. It's a copyright law thing. Adobe is trying to enforce copyright law on fonts, on their font library. Good in theory. In practice, broken. Doesn't work. It's just not modern desktop friendly. The other problem is you're not always going to have an internet connection. So if your work uses Adobe fonts from the Adobe font library and it's all cloud activated, you won't be able to get your work done, and that can be massively frustrating. So my solution, and I think most people's solution who run into this, is it's just simply don't ever use Adobe Creative Cloud fonts because they're very unreliable, it's very frustrating, and totally counter to, you know, the proper design process. So what is our solution? Where can we get our fonts? And luckily, Google has been working really hard for everybody's benefit in the design world to develop the Open Font project. So fonts.google.com. It's an ever-growing font library that is always distributed as open type, true type font sets that have the added benefit of being HTML friendly. So they actually can, if you design a style guide in Adobe InDesign, these fonts are actually going to work in a browser. Whereas a lot of the fonts that are defined on the Adobe Creative Cloud will not work in a browser. They're not web friendly. A lot of them are, and Adobe's definitely working on it, but the key thing is that Adobe doesn't let you download the font file and actually use it and activate it, even if you're not connected to the internet. Google does. Google lets you download the font family. So any font that you can find in here, you download the file, you install it, it's actually a locally installed font. None of this cloud internet required nonsense. Even though this is primarily intended for websites, which this is the resource for websites that use these fonts, but Google has put this together as a resource for essentially for the web design and graphic design community. So it is very, very worth using because the fonts are super reliable and they're probably not going to go anywhere. And even if they did, for your print, you've got the file installed, so it's great. They're all free. You can use them for your design pleasure. Please use open type fonts. About the simplest thing I can say. You know, there's other libraries, Font Squirrel, whatever, they're all doing the same thing. They're distributing TTF and OTF fonts. Adobe, for whatever reason, got, obviously some lawyers got their hand on everything and they've kind of messed everything up. So basically the Adobe Creative Cloud font family, just due to the unreliability of it, is basically useless. So don't define those fonts, and be aware of where your fonts came from. And unfortunately I've got too many legacy projects that do require those, but every time I see an Adobe Creative Cloud font specified in the style guide, I replace it with a true type font, something that's equivalent. There's chances are you're going to find something pretty close. And this library is pretty big. It's got a really nice preview tool that you can put in whatever you like. it's going to help you preview. So picking headlines, font pairings, actually has quite a nice thing where it actually does sample font pairings. It gives you the license, popular pairings with Montserrat. You can sort of preview what it looks like. So it's kind of nice. I find it to be a very useful tool when doing my style guide definitions. So that is my rant for the day about Adobe Creative Cloud fonts.